What is up, everyone? Welcome back to jikGeek in the week. I'm your host JG, and this is episode 2 of our weekly podcast. It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a few weeks since we've last streamed. Lots been happening, lots been going on. Life stuff, work stuff, home stuff. So I'm just really glad to get back in front of the camera. And yeah, lots to talk about. Lots has happened since we last spoke. Yeah, let's get stuck in. Before we start, if you're joining us in the chat, drop a comment, drop a like if you're enjoying the content. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And yeah, just say hi. It's always great to let me know you're listening and watching and enjoying the content. So hopefully you can join us in the chat. But if not, we'll be posting this on the channel as a standalone video, but also we're going to be chopping it into the different parts. Now, if you joined us for episode 1 of jikGeek in the Week, you'll know that we're going to cover multiple different topics. This week, we're starting off with Disney Marvel's restructuring. We're then going to be looking at Marvel Phase 5 and Phase 6, maybe looking at a refocus, and what all of these changes mean for Marvel going forward. As we know, Marvel Phase 4 wasn't the best, so hopefully we can work through those articles and see what the changes mean for the brand. Since we've had our first jikGeek in the Week, Henry Cavill has not only came back as Superman, but has also now been dropped as Superman, so we'll be looking over that, discussing the impact of that for DC as well. We'll be taking a look at Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is the part 2 of the remake trilogy, so we're going to look through everything we know so far with that. And everyone's favourite author, George R.R. Martin, will be taking a look at his update on the Winds of Winter. I'm pretty sick of him now giving us deadlines about when he's going to be finished, because we know he doesn't stick to these. However, we'll be taking a look at his one of his latest Winds of Winter update and what that means for the upcoming book. To finish off, we'll be looking at the new Transformers films, Rise of the Beast being the first one. The trailer dropped, I think it was in the last week or so, and it looks absolutely epic. It really does. I must admit, I've watched the trailer about 6 times now, and I wish I had time to do a trailer review. Maybe I could do that with the next one that comes out, the second trailer. What we'll also be looking at, though, I've got an interesting article from, I think it's from Screen Rant, that we can go through, which looks at how this new trilogy, because it will be a trilogy, how that... where that ties in with the Bumblebee movie, equally where that is going forward, and how that ties into some pretty big bosses, and some pretty big enemies that we've all wanted for a long time. So looking forward to getting through that one. And then I think what we'll do is, over the last few weeks, we've heard the tragic news that Jason David Frank, aka the Green Ranger, sadly passed away, so we'll be paying a bit of a homage and our respects to him at the end of the live stream. So RIP JDT. But with that out the way, let's get on to the live stream. Really looking forward to this one. Loads to talk through. I guess before we start, wishing you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from myself at jikGeek. Thanks for a great year. It's the year where we kicked everything off. It's the year where we started the channel, and we're already 20 subscribers strong. Looking forward to more growth, more of you joining us in the following year. Loads more content to come, loads more jikGeek in the weeks to come, and plenty of videos and live streams and gaming as well. So lots to look forward to, lots to do. I just hope you all enjoy, and yeah, looking forward to the growth in the channel in 2023. Let's start with Marvel, though, because a lot has changed since we last spoke. We've had Bob Iger come back. Now, he was the guy that was, I don't think I've got him on here. He was the previous CEO before Bob Chapek took over. Now, Bob Chapek decided that he was going to revolutionise Disney Marvel, and in all fairness, his approach was to move away from all of the woke nonsense, all of the ideology, all of the political the politics, the kind of feminism, that sort of stuff, and really drill down into, let's look at again what the customers want. I don't think he's had a lot of time to do that. I mean, a strategic shift like that takes years. It really does. It really does. It takes years. I mean, look how long it's taken the ideological kind of woke strategy to form, and that took years. That's probably been going since probably 2013. So we're nearly 10 years deep, and it's only now really starting to come into its fruition. For Bob Iger to step back in, Bob Chapek hasn't had a lot of time. He's only had a few years. I think he's probably only had like maybe a couple of years to try and turn this ship around. And Disney is a big ship. It is a big, heavy, clunky ship with a lot of waste, a lot of fingers in pies, a lot of people in different areas that need changing, and it's a big task. It really is a big task. So I don't think he's had a lot of time to really put his mark on things, and to really try and change this from where it was to where it needs to be. I had big faith in Bob Chapek. I really did. I believed all of his BS that he said at the start of his reign. But interestingly now, what we've found is Bob Chapek has stepped down. Bob Iger's come back in. And it almost feels like Bob Iger has come in with a new plan, a new vision. I hope that's the case, because what we're already seeing is the restructuring Disney change. Now, we've got a great article here by thecosmiccircus.com. I don't think we've covered Cosmic Circus before on the channel. Earlier this week, Deadline reported that Disney would face some restructuring in the coming months. These reports have just a short time after the reinstatement of former Disney CEO Bob Iger. Now, he's only in there for a couple of years. I think he's only taken a 2-year contract. He's probably going to be shaking the company up pretty quickly. Now, with the Walt Disney Company set to change how they operate and handle all levels of his business, one has to wonder what this means for Lucasfilm and Marvel Studios' future projects. Hopefully, this change really, really turns the tide here, because, and we'll get on to Phase 4 of Marvel and Phase 5 and 6, but high level, Marvel Phase 4 was an absolute disaster. And I think probably apart from Spider-Man No Way Home, you could probably wipe the slate clean of Phase 4, disregard it altogether, and go from the end of Phase 3 to Spider-Man, jumping straight to Phase 5. That's all these little standalone projects. You could probably get rid of them all. What I would also say is, though, is that it does need a shift. The quality has dropped. The wokeness has set in. The quality, especially of the Disney Plus shows, has very, very lacked. And considering the only real hit that Marvel have had in the last couple of years since Endgame is a joint venture with Sony, which was Spider-Man No Way Home, it just goes to show that the level of quality that they are delivering has just been not up to scratch. So hopefully what this means for future projects, specifically for Marvel, is a change and a refocus and a kind of a reshift to the days gone by of phases 1 to 3. Now, just going back to this article, according to Deadline's report, Disney will face organisational and operating changes within the company to address the board's goals. Hopefully those board's goals now have changed in line with customers as opposed to investment, investment companies, what they want, or the shareholders, or, kind of the woke ideology people that are probably backing Disney. While the plans are in the early stages, changes in their structure and operations, including within Disney, Marvel, I believe that means, and including possibly the distribution approach and the business platform selected, can be expected. So what this means is, top to bottom, Disney's having a change. Hopefully it's going through an operational restructure, a bit of a pivot, which is always a good thing, considering how poorly received Disney has been over the last few years. Over COVID, it was disastrous. And we're not just looking at things like Marvel on screen now. We're looking at Lucasfilm and Star Wars. We're looking at things like the parks as well. Been an absolute disaster. So we've been talking to our sources about what might have been going on with Marvel in regard to Disney's restructuring plans and have some interesting things to share. I'll break it all down for you in my latest report below. So Marvel Studios and the problem with oversaturation. Now, before we get into this, the Critical Drinker did a great video. I don't know if you've managed to check all that out yet. Basically breaking down all of Marvel's problems so far. It really does a great job of articulating where we've come from since Endgame to its current state. And I think it goes all the way up to Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. So it's worth checking out, the Critical Drinker. After the live stream, I'll drop the link to that video in the description below. So Marvel Studios and the problem with oversaturation. Marvel's success back when it was developing and rolling out the Infinity Saga was partly due to the way Marvel paced itself and its releases. In a span of 11 years, they released 23 films that explore the MCU with the Infinity Saga, arguably one of the greatest cinema feats we will ever see, ever. And Phase 4 just doesn't even compare. Rightly so. In comparison, Phase 4 has been 19 projects alone, one after the other, over the span of 2 years. 8 Disney Plus series, which have been awful. Pretty much all of them. 7 theatrical releases, which again, Spider-Man No Way Home was the only decent one. Two Disney Plus specials, and The Legends and I Am Group shorts, which I haven't watched those. This great overflow of projects then branches out as a series of other issues with how Marvel has handled Phase 4. First and foremost, a significant part of the audience feels that there is an oversaturation of Marvel. Not having a rest period between projects makes it hard for fans to keep up with the saga, and interest in future projects begins to grow stale. This is likely due to allowing fans to garner enough anticipation during the next up-and-coming project. Now, this was the beauty of Phases 1 to 3. They looked at delivering small amounts of projects over the year, and it helped build up the tension towards the next project. It helped build up the appetite, and it also helped build up the overarching story. Now, apart from really Loki, No Way Home, and Doctor Strange Madness, can't remember what it was called, Multiverse of Madness, those really were the only 3 that have contributed to this overall narrative of the multiverse of Kang. And it's really only until we're getting to Ant-Man, which is the start of Phase 5, that we're starting to build on this overarching theme, this overarching big bad. Now, we take a look at Phases 1 to 3. Thanos was introduced at the end of Avengers 1, which was the end of Phase 1. That's like saying we to be introduced to, and clearly that was the clear bad. I don't think Phase 4 has been clearly set up enough to articulate what the next 3 phases means. because they could go anywhere with the multiverse. It's only now we're in phase 5 with Ant-Man, we clearly know what this phase is going to be all about. Now, as it said above, all of these different projects, regardless of quality, have just been one after the other, after the other, after the other, and need a bit of breathing space, because one, you've got to keep up, you know, if you're a real diehard fan, keep up with all of this content. 2, you've got to sit through it all, if it's bad or good. And 3, really, in order to articulate what's going on with a lot of the films, you've had to have watched things like WandaVision, things like Loki, to really get a sense of what's going on in terms of the overarching story. So to bounce from Disney Plus to the cinema screen is quite a big ask for your core audience to do, really. Now, there's also the issue of quality, and we'll get on to quality, but just to touch on it here, having too many projects released at once spreads the production workforce thin. Ultimately, this leads to issues with the quality of the final project, which have resonated in Phase 4 projects as of late. There have been issues with editing, pacing, incongruencies with scripts and stories, and the problems with the visual effects of several projects. All of these issues are more and more are a result of the larger problem. Now, I do have, I think it's a comicbook.com article about Marvel's refocus to quality over quantity, but I think this part is quite critical in this article, because it just shows that it's not just the actors that are wearing thin, it's the design, the special effects, the story. All of those are wearing thin as well, and everyone involved with those are wearing thin as well. Now, it's not like Marvel can not hire more people to do these things, because they're, you know, bloody cash cow, and they've got the backing of Disney and the Disney investors. So it's not like they're short of a few quid, but it's probably the talent out there that is quite short at the moment, and the fact that Marvel probably works these people to death. Now, what we've heard regarding re-evaluating the Marvel multiverse saga. We've received word from our sources that Marvel is currently re-evaluating its release lineup for phases 5 and 6. As phase 4 comes to a close, we've been informed of internal negative feedback about how phase 4 was handled regarding product, distribution and quality. Now, what have we got here? This was the slate for phase 5. So we start with Ant-Man Quantumania, we then go to Secret Invasion, which actually looks pretty decent, to be fair. That whole, I think it's with the, I can't remember what they're called. Is it the Krigs or the Krags or something like that? But that'll involve Nick Fury. That looks a lot like, though, the days of Captain America Winter Soldier. So hopefully I'll be checking that out and probably doing a review on the channel. But let me know what you think, maybe in the comments, about what you're looking forward to most about Phase 5. Regardless if it's going to get taken down or not, because I think this article is going to go on to suggest certain projects are going to get dropped. Now, I'm really looking forward to Daredevil. I just hope it's not woke, and, you know I've heard recently it's kind of tapering more towards being more child-friendly, as the Netflix wasn't, because that was absolutely badass on Netflix. But looking forward to Quantumania, looking forward to Secret Invasion, looking forward to Daredevil. Apart from that, not really looking forward to much else. Maybe Guardians of the Galaxy 3 looks okay. We'll see how that one turns out. So, phases 5 and 6 are headed in the same direction as Phase 4. As a preventative measure to ensure quality control, Marvel and Disney are now re-evaluating future releases. Good, because this needs to happen, because Phase 4 was an absolute... it was just dog shit. One possible move by Disney would be to develop a sort of creative oversight on Marvel Studios' future releases as a way of establishing more quality control moving forward. Seems like a good idea. We've also heard that the idea of special presentations has gained more traction and as a distribution method for more potential projects moving forward. Now, from what from what I've understood about special presentations, they're kind of like mini movies, kind of like a couple of hours long, but maybe give yourself a Google about what that means. So from what we're being told, projects already in post-production are still being set for release at this time, and the main focus of re-evaluation will be on projects still in pre-production stage. Hopefully that means crap like Agatha, Ironheart, sack them off. Echo, sack that off. The Marvels, sack that off. Blade could be cool. Captain America New World Order could be good. Thunderbolts, can't I stand half of them. So I'm hoping that's good. Let's see what it says though. From what we've been told, products, we've already said that. We've also been told by sources to expect shifts in release schedules for some projects. Changes in media formats for others, and in the most extreme and unlikely courses, a postponement or outright cancellation of a project that would be not suited towards the overall story of the multiverse saga. I do think that means things like Agatha, maybe Ironheart, maybe Echo. Shit that we don't need. We may know more regarding the status of Marvel's future projects in the coming months. We'll keep you up to date as soon as more information becomes available. Well, I mean, that's a great start to the that's a great start to understanding what that means for Marvel, because I'm really glad that they're going to take a different approach to this. Now, Phase 4 was just crap, apart from Spider-Man, and we can't even really regard that as a Marvel project now, because it was a 50-50 with Sony, and I think Sony got more of the money. I'm just going to check we're coming in okay, actually, on the chat. Coming in all good. The main critical thing for me, though, going forward will be this dynamic shift from Marvel looking at quality over quantity, and CBR have got a great article about just that. Now, Marvel could be looking to focus on quality over quantity for the Marvel Cinematic Universe in phases 5 and 6. According to a Marvel Studio source cited by Comic Book Circus, the studio is re-examining, we've just gone over this, negative feedback, the issues addressed. To prevent phases 5 and 6 from continuing down a similar path, the report claims Disney could ensure a creative oversight. Right, we've just gone through this bit. Right, this is the bit I wanted to get to. So, complaints about Marvel Studios' recent titles. Marvel Studios has come under fire for quality issues since the beginning of Phase 4. VFX companies have slammed Marvel for overworking its artists and giving them tight deadlines to complete their work. Well, this shouldn't come as a surprise, but, you know, Marvel, probably the biggest name in the industry, has been for the last few years. It's going to drain every drop it can out of its resources, and whilst that was probably manageable for them in phases 1 to 3, now we're in a quantity over quality, you know, kind of approach in phase 4. 19 projects was it in the previous article? No wonder there's been complaints, and there's been a complete shift in the quality. A common complaint following each new release in Phase 4 is that the shared universe now feels too disconnected, and there is an inconsistency in tone between projects such as The Eternals, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, or Thor Love and Thunder. Well, this is one, quality over quantity, the quality over quantity approach. 2, having pretty shitty directors direct these massive budget films. And 3, not introducing a clear and concise overarching enemy, overarching narrative, overarching problem. And I guess number 4 is these projects, these standalone films and TV shows, not adhering to that and not tying in somehow to that big overarching theme. Marvel Studios President and Chief Creative Officer Kevin Feige defended this aspect. Of course, he ain't going to come out and shit all over his own brand, is he? Claiming that this is what makes Phase 4 so unique. It is, but I think it's just a stopgap, really, and I think it's more of an experimental phase. We've tested some things, and they clearly haven't worked. Well, I'm not being funny, Kev, but I could have told you that half of those projects wouldn't have worked in Marvel's Phase 4. So there's always the intention that the Marvel Studios promise a particular group of characters and tone. Feige said it promises a spirit and a style and a vibe and an emotion, and it's perfect timing to go from Moon Knight to Miss Marvel, significantly because they are so unique and so different. They're both so bad as well. I mean, Moon Knight started off okay, but finished poorly. Typical bad Marvel CGI nonsense. I mean, don't even get me started when Thor and Love and Thunder, that was just the icing on the cake of how bad Phase 4 has been. I think we've touched on these, the behind-the-scenes troubles. Phases 5 and 6 have already seen some setbacks on the theatrical side this year. No Way Home director John Watts dropped out of helming the Fantastic Four reboot and was replaced by WandaVision's showrunner Matt Shakman. Additionally, Mahershala Ali's MCU debut in Blade was put on pause after the original director Basim Tariq left the project and script issues delayed the production. Lovecraft Country director Jan Demange took over from Tariq in November. In re-evaluating the Disney Plus content, the source indicates that Marvel could push for more special presentations. We've gone over those. This approach would supposedly be more cost effective. You see, before they didn't talk about being more cost effective. They just put out a really good project, really good film, focused on quality, focused on adhering that to the Infinity Stones and adhering that to this grand narrative of the Thanos, Infinity War, Infinity Saga. And it worked. Stuck to the book material for the most part. Focused on quality, focused on story, focused on character development. That seems to have gone all out out the window now. I really hope for the life of this brand and this franchise that they pivot back to that, because they know that works. Yeah, they've had all their experiments and everything in Phase 4, and they've done all their crappy little projects. Just shelve the ones that don't adhere to the grand narrative of Kang and the multiverse, and focus on quality, please, going forward, Marvel. Let me know what you think, though, in the comments below. Let me know what you think Phase 5 and 6 should drop, shouldn't drop, should keep. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Now, since our first jikGeek in the week, we've had a couple of statements from Disney, but we've also had a couple of statements from DC, and I've got a quick article here from comicbook.com about Henry Cavill. Now, a few weeks ago, Henry Cavill came back and he had the green light to say that he was returning as Superman. Happy days. I think he's a fantastic Superman. I think he's got a lot going about him. He's got the look, he's got the physique, he's got the, he's just got the aura of Superman. He's got this he's got the mannerisms of Superman. Obviously, he performed really well in Man of Steel. Questionable in Superman versus Batman, but he was fantastic in what we saw of him in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which for me is canon and the only canon. Since then, though, DC have turned around and said, we're going to scrap Superman. We're going to scrap Henry Cavill as Superman. Not scrap Superman, sorry. And we're going in another direction. And what I just wanted to go through was Henry Cavill's statement about his Superman exit. Now, for me, this is a bad move, because despite all of the problems that DC have had with their slate of characters, it hasn't been Ben Affleck's problem, it hasn't been Gal Gadot's problem, and it certainly hasn't been Henry Cavill's problem that the three main characters for their Justice League DC extended universe, they're not to blame. It's been the showrunners, it's been, you know, the directors, the script writers, it's been all of kind of the background, the direction that they've taken DC in. You know, the likes of Walter Hamada, who's now, I think, left DC. It's kind of all of this supporting structure that has really turned DC into a flop. And I was really looking forward to Zack Snyder's Justice League Parts 2 and 3, because that would have been an absolute mammoth hit. Maybe years in the future we can get that. I doubt it, though. But going from you know, a few of the recent DC films, we had Wonder Woman 84, which was a disaster. We had the Suicide Squad, which was decent, and James Gunn is now, you know, who directed that, has now picked up the ropes. He's now the equivalent of Kevin Feige for DC. And we also had Black Adam, which was bad. I've got to admit, it was bad. And it did tease Henry Cavill coming back as Superman and kind of teasing us with that, maybe a Black Adam or maybe a Superman crossover in future. But of course now we've heard that Black Adam's been scrapped. Henry Cavill has been scrapped as Superman. Dwayne Johnson's been scrapped as Black Adam. And I think it's because these last few projects haven't been as lucrative as DC would want. Now, we all know that DC has recently been taken over by Warner Brothers Discovery and head up by, for the life of me, I can't think of his name. What's his name? I'm going to need to... DC head. No, his name will come to me in a moment. Warner Brothers. Discovery head. David Zaslav, that's the one. So he's come in and he's basically clean slate. And I think after the failure that was Black Adam, I think he's thought, right, that's it, we're scrapping DC, we're going to start again, we're getting a new head of in, James Gunn, who, by the way, directed Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2. So if we're comparing James Gunn to what he's previously done, and he directed the Suicide Squad, the quality's there. I just don't like the fact that DC's meant to be serious, and the Suicide Squad film, as well as Guardians of the Galaxy, didn't have that seriousness to it. What I've always pictured DC is, and the tone of DC films and the tone of Justice League films, Zack Snyder got it bang on. That Justice League film he had a bit of comic relief, but the story was serious. He took the characters seriously. He took Darkseid seriously. I don't think we're going to get that from James Gunn. I think we're going to get more of the Suicide Squad, more of Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a shame, really, because I personally think it's not the right direction to go in. But let's see. It could be different. It could be. Anyway, David Zaslav's come in. He's reformed DC. He's got rid of Henry Cavill, and I think he just wants to start again. Start again, fresh, clean slate. Get someone new in. Get someone new in to play Superman as well. And I guess what this means for Batman and Wonder Woman is maybe a clean slate for them as well. What I've heard, though, is that we're still going to get films like Aquaman 2. We're still going to get the problem film, which is the Flash movie. God knows what they're going to do with that now, because what's her name's? I think he's been arrested. What's his name? Ezra Miller. He's arrested. So if they need to do any kind of reshoots for that, God knows what they're going to do there. So they're in a bit of a predicament with those films, but we're still going to see them. And I think what this means for DC as a whole is a fresh, clean slate. Hopefully they go with a JSA approach, Justice League, Justice Society of America, or Justice League of America approach, and they really explore the villains that all of these great characters have got. I mean, we haven't had a Darkseid villain yet, and that could be our equivalent of Thanos. We haven't had Brainiac. That could be another fantastic, massive build-up towards Brainiac. We haven't had really the suite of villains in Batman storylines. I mean, we haven't had a Joker versus Batman storyline really since the Dark Knight trilogy, the Christopher Nolan trilogy. So hopefully we get that as well. Well, let's see what comicbook.com have got to say. So, Warner Bros. Discovery have been all over the place with their plans for the DC Comics adaptations, and things have been getting more and more confusing. James Gunn and Peter Safran will head the newly minted DC Studios as co-CEOs with the expectation of crafting a 10-year plan. Gunn and Safran plan on revealing their plan for the DC Universe very soon, with the former revealing that he's working on a brand new Superman movie and will focus on the character in his younger years. Henry Cavill was expected to return as the Man of Steel, but he will no longer do so, and another actor will be cast in the role. Cavill took to Instagram to reveal the news, and it seems that while he's sad he will no longer get to don the cape, he is excited about the future of Clark Kent. I mean, this offers quite a few discussion points here, because the 10-year plan's interesting. That then sparks my thinking and suggests they will be crossing over not just films but TV as well. I mean, for God's sake, all you got to do is bring out a 6, 8, 10 part Batman series, and everyone would flock to Warner Brothers Max. I would watch it. I'd subscribe for the 6-8 weeks it's on. It would be an absolute mega hit. Collection of Batman's kind of sub villains over a 10 episode plan, maybe revolving around an overarching Joker villain in the background as well, towards maybe a Justice League film. That would be absolutely epic. Whether they do that, I don't know. But what the 10-year plan means to me is that they're going to cross over films with TV, hopefully with an overarching suite of villains that come together. Because I thought Zack Snyder's plan sounded really good for Justice League Part 2 and 3. I mean, if you haven't heard what he was planning on doing, go and check that out. I think you can just type into YouTube or Google about his phases 2 and 3. I'm not going to read the statement that Henry Cavill said, but he's a classy guy. He said he's happy that Disney's still going to be producing Superman content. He's gutted that he's not going to be a part of it, but he hopes he's hoping the best for James Gunn and Peter Safran going forward. I mean, he's a classic guy, that Henry Cavill, and my God, he's like the perfect. For me, he was the perfect he was the perfect person to play Superman. I just hope we get someone with the same gravitas, the same mannerisms, the same everything that Henry Cavill, because he should be the biggest superstar at the moment, but he's been screwed over multiple times with this and The Witcher, because he dropped out of The Witcher not just because of the ideology and the wokeness and going against the character of Geralt and the story of The Witcher, but he dropped out of The Witcher to play Superman again and to focus on Superman again. So for him to come back and now have nothing, hopefully he gets something good in the... he's got something going for him in the works. Right, so Gunn and Safran began their jobs as co-CEOs of Disney Studios at the beginning of the month. And I think this was December. And it's safe to say that the future of DC is looking bright. I mean, fingers crossed it is, because, yeah, whilst on the edge about his approach with about Gunn's approach with the kind of seriousness of DC, hopefully he takes the ball by the horns and really looks at this as a grand 10-year plan. When the duo was announced by the new Warner Brothers Discovery boss, Zaslav, they released a statement on their excitement for the job. We're honoured to be the stewards of the DC characters we've loved since we were children, Gunn and Safran added in their joint statement. We look forward to collaborating with the most talented writers, good, talented directors, good, and talented actors in the world. Well, that is Henry Cavill. To create an integrated, multi-layered universe that still allows for the individual expression of the artists involved. That's good. That's very promising. Our commitment to Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Harley Quinn, and the rest of the DC stable of characters is only equalled by our commitment to the wonder of human possibility these characters represent. We're excited to invigorate the theatrical experience around the world as we tell some of the biggest, most beautiful, and grandest stories ever told. My God, round of applause. Let's hope that's not BS. Let's hope that they can actually put their, talk the talk and walk the walk. I really hope that they do. Now let's have a quick pause. What we're going to go to next is, let's hope James Gunn and this Peter Safran really hit home with this one, because like I said, they've got an absolute bucket load of characters and villains and storylines and comic books to adapt from. And we haven't seen a decent Robin for years. We haven't seen a decent Darkseid really yet, and those are the two main things for me. Another Batman and Joker combo would be absolutely epic. So let's see what they bring. I mean, hopefully in the new year we can get some more from James Gunn about his plans. So fingers crossed. Now let's move on to Final Fantasy VII, and let's take a look at a great Games Radar article. Hopefully this is coming out okay for you. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, everything we know so far. So just to recap, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is part 2 of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. I think Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 was called Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 is called Rebirth. And Part 3, I think, might be called something like Reborn or something like that. Maybe it's in this article. But I just wanted to kind of recap as to what's gone on in the, where we are in the previous installment of the FF7 Remake. What we know so far with this this second part of what it means for the story, because at the end of the, spoilers, but for the end of the remake of part 1, there were some changes. Most notably, I think Aerith survives, and we had that battle with Sephiroth at the end of that conclusion. So, and what this kind of part 2 means going forward as well. So hopefully this digs into it. Final Fantasy Remake Part 2 is coming to PS5, it's an exclusive, in 2023, and it's now part of a trilogy. So this was revealed by Square Enix earlier this year, that it's now part of a trilogy. So, FF7 Rebirth is one of the most anticipated new games for 2023. Announced as part of the 25th anniversary celebration in the summer of 2020, Rebirth is the new name for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, with the legendary RPG transforming into a trilogy of PS5 games. Whilst it's quite some time until we reach the expected Winter 23 launch, and Winter 23 from a Square Enix point of view is not, it doesn't just mean December. I think it goes all the way up to March 23. That's kind of their winter window. We're steadily starting to learn, including intriguing details such as recent news that the mysterious whispers that seemingly kept the characters on their destined path in Part 1 apparently cannot act. Oh, in Part 2. Oh, God, they're actually... I mean, high level, I thought those whispers and the introduction of the whispers were a bit of a cop-out and a bit of a... you know, that they kind of transformed the story in a way that really didn't need to happen. Surely they could have shoehorned in a fight with Sephiroth, you know, an epic battle with Sephiroth at the end of Part 1. But because using these whispers allowed all time travel dimension crap, we ended up fighting Sephiroth at the end of Part 1. So FF7 Rebirth release date, I mean, looks pretty good there, and judging by what we know from, you know, the original game, Cloud and Sephiroth are going to be together in parts of this story. So FF7 Rebirth has a tentative release window of next winter, which, while the winter season typically runs December through March, we're expecting FF7 Remake Part 2 to land in 2023. It will likely be March 23. That will make it 3 long years since the original release of FF7 Remake, but with the enhanced integrated version of the game now available. So that looks at the Yuffie kind of DLC content. There's plenty of time to get caught up and play through Cloud's reimagined adventure. I'm mixed as to whether the whole reimagining, it's a remake, it should just be, it's more of a reboot because they're changing the story. So I'm interested to see what they say about this going forward. Right, what does this mean in terms of platforms then? So the only platform FF7 Rebirth is confirmed to launch on is the PS5. Whilst FF7 Remake did originally release on PS4, it would appear that Remake Part 2 is skipping the platform entirely as Square Enix focuses its efforts on the new generation of consoles. Well, this is also a marketing and a sales campaign to push everyone to buy a PS5, just so they can play the FF7 Remake Part 2. Whether a PC release is on the cards, Square Enix is yet to confirm. But Remake Integrate is now available on Steam. There is a fair chance that Rebirth will eventually make it to the PC. Well, that's good. That's good. I don't own a PS5 and I've got no plans to own a PS5. So if I was going to play that... And let me know if you want me to, you know, do a playthrough of this when it comes out in the comments below. That'd be really handy to know if you want to see that type of content. I know we're doing our FFX Final Fantasy X No Sphere playthrough at the moment, but that's kind of like a, you know, that's kind of like a personal project. If you want to see Rebirth on the channel, I'm more than happy to buy it if it came out on PC. Will the remake come to Xbox? And I've read that bit. It basically, a remaster of FF7 prequel in the style of a remake is coming to Xbox One and Xbox Series X later this year. So Square Enix might be laying the groundwork for a future release of Remake Intergrade on Microsoft platforms. I don't see why they wouldn't release it on Microsoft. So what do we know about the gameplay? I mean, you know, the visuals from the first remake, you know, part one of the remake were exquisite. They did an absolutely incredible job. They do. FF7 Rebirth gameplay is expected to follow in the same mould as Remake. High quality production values, fast action leaning combat, and the sort of world building that not only a Final Fantasy game is able to deliver. The FF7 Rebirth trailer was light, in-engine, showcasing the fidelity strides Square Enix is taking with part 2 of the Remake trilogy. I mean, I've watched the trailer, it looks fantastic. Although we're yet to see what changes have been made to combat and exploration. I think we discussed this on episode 1 of jikGeek in the Week when we looked at the FF16 news. And not the biggest fan of, you know, hack and slash, but I think FF7 got it absolutely bang on in terms of the gameplay. It really straddled between hack and slash and that age-old turn-based combat. Now, I'm a massive fan of FFX, Final Fantasy X, so my bias goes towards turn-based combat. FF7 mixed the two absolutely flawlessly in my eyes, because you had the kind of slow-motion turn-based approach, but if you wanted to get down and dirty with the hack and slash, you could do that as well. I would like that, you know, the developers to mimic that going forward. It doesn't look like they're doing that for FF16, but hopefully they do that for Final Fantasy X Rebirth, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Sorry, getting carried away on my FFX there. So the trailer, FF7 Rebirth trailer might have only been 1 minute 34 seconds long, but we'll be dining out on it for weeks. Well, I think it was an exceptional trailer. It showed all of what we've come to know and love about part 1. It showed us some interesting story pieces that we will see in part 2. Most notably, whatever's going on with Zack. The part in the game where Cloud and Sephiroth get together in terms of the story piece. What it means in terms of Aerith's story, I don't think that was quite explicit. And yeah, in terms of, I think it showed as well that we get to play as Red 13 as well. So that should be interesting. Now, this short glimpse into what Square Enix has planned for FF7 Remake Part 2 has certainly piqued our interest, particularly as it shows Cloud and Sephiroth stalking some familiar areas as part of the as the party pushes out of Midgar and into the wider world. That's what I'm really looking forward to here, is the open world, the expansion, the hopefully we get to see the Gold Saucer as well from you know, back in the day. And hopefully we get that massive expanse, and hopefully it's the expanse that we saw on the original Final Fantasy VII, where you could pretty much go everywhere. Because if it's down a linear path, that's going to really take away some of the beauty of the open expansion that we had with the original FF7. So, of course, the FF7 Rebirth trailer also gave us our first look at the upgraded visual style, with Square Enix leveraging the power of the PS5 for this new RPG adventure. I mean, the visuals looked incredible, as they did in Remake Part 1, to be fair. Right, the story. Now, just to touch on where we were in the previous story, it has kind of slightly changed. The ending wasn't you're on the bike and you're fighting the mech with your sword, because that was the end of Disc 1, I think. in the original Final Fantasy VII. We were subject to a lot of new CGI cutscenes with the Whispers in this remake part 1. We had that great fight actually with Sephiroth at the end, which was an epic battle. Music was great, visuals were great, the backdrop was great, the combat was brilliant. But where the characters end up is a different story. And they had that whole kind of timey-wimey, time crap. It was crap for me. The fact that they changed it was crap. I didn't like it. Hopefully they stick to the story going forward. And hopefully the Whispers don't have as much of an impact as they did. Just checking the chats. If you join us in the chat, feel free to drop a like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. Yeah, say hi. Let me know how you're getting on. Let me know what your plans are for the rest of the holiday season. Now, where were we? Final Fantasy VII Rebirth story. If you played both Final Fantasy VII from 1999 and Final Fantasy Remake from 2020, you'll know by now that the games have drastically different storylines. Well, this is what we've just discussed. Square Enix took the framework of the original and reimagined it for a new generation of players. Well, they could have adapted it, and they did for the new generation of players, but they could have just stuck to the original story because that was absolutely flawless, really. Square Enix took the framework for a new generation of players, which means there's little to know for certain on what twists and turns we can expect from the Rebirth story. However, we do know that this will be a critical continuation of where Intergrade left off, with Cloud arriving at the village of Calm and Zack entering the Sector 5 church in search of Aerith, before allowing the wider party to explore the wider world beyond the boundaries of Midgar. I mean, I like how they're bringing Zack in, because there was a lack of Zack in FF7. We'll see. Additionally, creative director Tetsuya Nomura says you won't need to have played either Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VII Remake to enjoy Part 2 of the adventure. Rebirth is being designed so the player can enjoy this game whether they know the original game or not. Oh, that's good. That's good. Because that kind of barrier to entry was always one of my fears. Like, you had to have known all of the backstory. You've got to know the whatever the game is at the moment with Zack. You've got to know all that backstory. You've got to have played FF7. But that's good. Like, the barrier to entry is low here, which is good for new players. In fact, new players might even enjoy starting their FF7 journey with Rebirth. Well, that's interesting. Cloud and his friends embark on a new journey in this game, and I believe that the scenes that they witness after leaving Midgar will give players a fresh new experience. I'd go as far to say I wouldn't recommend players starting FF7 from Rebirth. If you're going to start with Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is part 1. If you're really dedicated to it all, start from the beginning of it all with the original FF7, because that is a flawless game. It's not my favourite Final Fantasy, but it's a flawless game. Now, what does this say about development? So, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth development is thought to have been ongoing since before production wrapped of 2020's remake for PS4. Square Enix has since launched its intermission DLC, Intergrade, and remake Intergrade for PS5 and PC. Producer Yashinori Kitase, big up Kitase, acknowledges that the 3 years wait has been tough, although he believes that the end result will be worth it. 3 years may feel like a long time for all of the fans who are eagerly awaiting the next game, but we want to offer the best experience possible. and reassure everyone that the development is proceeding in an astonishingly fast-paced rate for such a large-scale HD title. I mean, you can't argue with their commitment to giving us the best product that they could possibly give us. All of their effort, all of their, all of their skills, all of their commitment has been, you can tell it's been put into Final Fantasy VII. They've took everything from what made FF7 great and they've mixed it with a bunch of stuff to arguably adhere to old fans like myself and new fans that like the hack and slash, the quick time battle, those sorts of fans, mixed it all and put some absolutely incredible visuals together to give us Final Fantasy Remake Part 1. So I'm hoping that they replicate that, but they give us Part 2 on a more grand, expansive, in a more grand, expansive way, because we've got the open world, we're bringing in the new characters. I say the new characters, we're bringing in more of the FF7 characters like Zack, more of Sephiroth, more Aerith. So let's see what that brings. Creative director Tetsuya Nomura had this to say regarding development. The development has been progressing rapidly since we adopted a new development structure. Well, that's a good thing. A title of this scale, which everything is interconnected even before production began, is truly rare. Development has entered full production and the team is highly motivated in putting everything together on the project and is working to create a finished game. Now, to finish this, I just want to touch on the trilogy part, because this is the part that I liked about the article. Square Enix announced that FF7 Rebirth is actually the middle chapter in a larger FF7 remake trilogy of games. Here's a fun little bit of trivia for you, which bears absolutely no standing on how Square Enix may develop this reimagined storyline. I really don't hope that they deviate too far from where the original FF7 went, though. That's my only worry about this trilogy. When FF7 released in '97 for PS1, it came packed into 3 discs, so that's some fun symmetry. Anyway, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth had this to say about the trilogy. Making the middle part of a trilogy has its own challenges, but there are plenty of classic second installments in the world. I mean, I can name a few. The Dark Knight being one of them. Defined by stunning story twists and deeper explorations of their characters. Often these second installments become a fan favourite amongst fans. In the same vein, we are aiming to make Rebirth an even more gripping and memorable experience than Final Fantasy VII Remake. Well, that's good news. Because really, sometimes the middle is where things break. There's been some great middle acts. Dark Knight, The Two Towers, two to name of many good second parts. But a lot of trilogies or a lot of second seasons are where things kind of start to dip. In terms of quality, they try and do more than what they gave us in the first installment and put fresh new ideas in. I mean, let's take Avatar 2 for instance. Not shitting on the film because it looks fantastic, but it's not as good as is number 1. And if they brought out a third one, I'd like to hope that they would fix what went wrong in number 2 and develop a third film that not only matches the quality of number 1, but the visual quality in terms of the story, but the visual quality of number 2 as well. So the best bits from both elements into number 3. Now, additionally, Nomura confirmed that some development has already begun on the third title. Well, that is fantastic news, because that means that they've planned this from the start to be a trilogy, and they're looking to integrate. They're looking to wrap everything up so it all interconnects, which is, to me, music to my ears, really. They're not just making it up as they go along. The creative director has already started on the development and working towards the completion of the series. Nomura and his team at Square Enix are working with what he calls an interconnected development structure, which can hopefully mean that we don't have to wait 3 years after the release of Rebirth to play the final part of the trilogy. Absolutely fantastic news. What I would say is, I mean, this is looking to be an absolutely epic game, and if they can make it more expansive than what they did with Remake, but tie in the quality, the visuals, even the story for the most part was smack bang on, and give us a, you know, a visual and gameplay masterpiece that they did in the first part of this trilogy, I have no doubt that Final Fantasy Rebirth will be another smash hit. Now, where are we in terms of how long have we been streaming? An hour. God, it's felt longer than an hour. Right, let's move on. Let's move on to Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, Winds of Winter. So, it has been 4,189 days since the release of The Dance with Dragons. And now, George Martin is saying that the Winds of Winter is 75% done. Thank God for that, because I am sick of waiting for the Winds of Winter. Why is it taking this long? Numerous things. COVID, maybe. But the main two are the Game of Thrones TV show, the House of the Dragon TV show, all of his TV appearances, movie appearances, convention appearances, and all his other books that he's published, no matter whether it's to do with Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, you know, A Song of Ice and Fire world, or other stuff. All of these have been massive distractions for George to finish The Winds of Winter, because arguably it's going to be the most expansive book that we've seen so far. I think it's going to be 3 volumes. I mean, the biggest volume at the moment, I think, was A Dance with Dragons, the previous one, clocking out over like 1,100 pages. But I think this is going to be, I reckon this is going to be in the 1,500 page mark. I know he goes on about manuscript pages, but putting, you know, book pages down, I reckon this is going to be 3 volumes at around 1,500 pages. He's had a lot of distractions, but I'm so glad that he's 75% done. So, what have Screen Rant got to say about this? Game of Thrones book Winds of Winter is 75% done, according to author George R.R. Martin, though he is hesitant to give any hard release dates. Well, I think he's learnt his lesson from previously giving us pie in the sky dates where the Winds of Winter is going to be completed. Because I think he's probably done about a dozen updates now where he said, yeah, it will be done by this date, and he just hasn't delivered. So I think he's given up on giving us any sorts of dates now. Right, what have we got here? Game of Thrones author George Martin says his next book, Winds of Winter, is 75% done. The novel is the long-anticipated next instalment in the series of epic fantasy books titled A Song of Ice and Fire. The book series originated in '96 and was famously adapted into the Game of Thrones series by HBO. A prequel series, HBO's House of the Dragon, premiered in September to critical and commercial success. It was fantastic. We've done reviews if you want to check those out on the channel. Yeah, we've done our 1 to 10 episodes, and then we've done a season recap as well. So check them out. Let me know what you think. Game of Thrones first debuted in 2011 and it quickly became a hit with audiences. In its fifth season, the story caught up with the books and needed to surpass the novels in its subsequent seasons. Now, at this critical conjuncture, you may think that this is where things started to go wrong, but if we look at season 4, whilst season 4 is an absolute masterpiece and adheres to book 2 of A Storm of Swords quite perfectly, certain things in the middle of that season start to kind of go awry. But it's definitely from season 5 where things not only massively deviate from A Dance with Dragons, but cut out a lot of that book. And it's where George Martin, I think, fell out with Dan and Dave, and he parted ways. He didn't direct or write an episode in season 5 onwards. He didn't have any input into the episodes going forward from season 5 onwards. And even epic episodes like, what was its name, Hard Home, they weren't even in A Dance with Dragons, which is the 5th book. I mean, things like The Dawn Plot, things like Lady Stoneheart, Young Griff, excuse me, these 3 critical plots, mind you, were shelved for season 5 onwards. Now, imagine how many seasons of Game of Thrones we would have got with those 3 storylines put in. Yeah, we wouldn't have got things like Hard Home, but I would sacrifice Hard Home for those 3 story arcs because they would have been absolutely epic. Right, where were we? Martin informed the series writers on the broad strokes of where he planned on taking the story. Nevertheless, the quality of the show suffered and its final season came as a disappointment to fans. Well, really, this wasn't just the final series. That was just the nail in the coffin for me. Everything really from season 5 onwards has been kind of a disappointment. Yeah, we've had some real epic episodes. Hard Home, Battle of the Bastards, The Winds of Winter, maybe a couple in season 7. But from an overall quality perspective, seasons 1 to 4, masterpiece. Seasons 5 to 8, lacking a lot. And comparing 5 to 8 to House of the Dragon blows them out of the water. It does. Nevertheless, the quality of the show suffered and its final seasons came as a disappointment. Meanwhile, the end of Game of Thrones has veered attention back onto Martin's book series, which currently remains unfinished. The latest book in the literary franchise, A Dance with Dragons, was published back in 2011. So it was published on the 12th of July 2011, which is nearly 4,200 days. Jesus Christ, that's long. What went wrong with Game of Thrones Season 8? That should be titled really, What Went Wrong with Game of Thrones Seasons 5 to 8? Well, without even reading this, they dropped critical storylines. They didn't have George on point. They didn't have the books to adapt. And especially with 7 and 8, they rushed it. They had less episodes. They had the budget to do as many episodes as they want and as many seasons as they want. But Dan and Dave wanted to get out of there. Those were the critical issues for me. And the quality dipped because they didn't have enough to adapt from. So George Martin gave an update on the progress of the upcoming Game of Thrones book Winds of Winter. They also revealed that he is about 3/4 into the novel in a live stream arranged by Penguin House following the season finale of House of the Dragon. Martin report answers questions surrounding his upcoming book, and while he is hesitant to give any solid release dates, as he doesn't want to disappoint fans, he states that The Winds of Winter will be the longest instalment yet and could run the risk of being split in half by its publishers. Probably is going to be, because Clash of the Kings, bloody hell, that was about 800, 900 pages long, I think. Martin also confirms that he's not yet begun work on the presumed final instalment of A Dream of Spring. Well, this just goes back to the rumour that he was being delayed because he was doing The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring at the same time. So that obviously then, you know, unless he magically appears with both books, that then puts that rumour to bed. So when will The Winds of Winter release? Despite the decade-long wait, readers may have another reason fueling their eagerness. The 8th and final season of Game of Thrones inspired huge disappointment and even outrage amongst most viewers. The season was criticised for its lack of depth and for speeding up the measured pace of the show. Following the disappointment surrounding the finale of Game of Thrones, Martin assured audiences that the upcoming books would take a significantly different direction. Thank the heavens! Because 5 to 8 was complete disappointment for me, and 7 and 8 was, it just ruined the show for me. Right, despite this, Martin has promised to take the time he needs to do the story right, no matter how many volumes it may take. Well, that's good, because really he's only got 2 books now to finish the story. That being The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, and he's got a lot to do. I would probably say he's probably in the middle of the story. So The Winds of Winter has not only got to finish the middle part of the story, it's got to start the end. Excuse me, with A Dream of Spring concluding this whole saga. He's got a lot to do. Fans of both the book and the show are getting hungry for the continuation. Anticipation will continue to rise the longer Martin takes to complete the series, as he faces the difficult task of ending a long-form story with a rabid fan base, especially following the failure of television series to do so. All he has to do is just not do what the television series did and focus on delivering what he's arguably done in the past 5 books, because they've all been critical successes. I mean, and I've loved every single one of them. Audiences may need to wait a while before they can decide which Game of Thrones ending they like best. Well, one's shit and one will probably not be shit, so I wonder which one will be good. I wonder which one that we'll like as fans. Despite being 75% done, it seems unlikely that The Winds of Winter could hit the shelves. Late 2024 at the earliest. Yeah, I mean, Christmas time is arguably going to be the best time to put this book out. Better sales, get the Christmas sales in. It still needs to be finished and go through an editing and printing process. What I've learnt though is George Martin edits as he goes along, and that's probably could be another reason why it's taking him so long. Until then, audiences can find some satisfaction by going back to the beginning with House of the Dragon. Not a bad, bad book and series to dive into, and the World of Ice and Fire, while you're waiting for A Winds of Winter. So, what do I think is going to happen here? I think we're going to probably get no other book now until we get The Winds of Winter. I think we'll get some updates in the next quarter of 2023. I don't think he will be finished until late 2023. Maybe September, October time. And then you've got all the kind of the production of the book, the distribution, the marketing of the book, etc. I think we will see season 2 of House of the Dragon before we see The Winds of Winter, which is not a bad thing. But as long as The Winds of Winter delivers, as long as it sets us up for that epic final book, A Dream of Spring, I don't care really how long it takes, as long as it delivers the quality that we've seen in the previous 5 installments. What do I think is going to happen though? And maybe we should do a dedicated Winds of Winter live stream. I think we're going to see it start with some epic battles. I think there's going to be a lot of story in the middle. I think we're going to see Shireen die, and I think we're going to see Jon Snow reborn. And then I think towards the end, I think we're going to see a lot of the prophecy stuff take fruition. I think we're going to end up with, I think this is, I don't know if this is a spoiler or if it's just me, but I think we're going to see the likes of Euron Greyjoy below the Horn of Winter. The wall come down. The others come this side of the wall. And I think Daenerys will either reach King's Landing, or there will be an epic final battle between her and young Fagon, i.e. young Griff. So we'll see. But I think it will end with that conclusion between ice and fire at two ends of the map. We'll see. Let me know what you think in the comments below, though, about what you about what's going to happen in the Winds of Winter. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Nonetheless, it's going to be an epic book, and yeah, we will have waited 10 plus years, but I'm just praying he delivers quality that we've seen so far in the previous 5. Now, to finish off this week's edition of jikGeek in the week, I just wanted to touch on another Screen Rant article about the latest Transformers trilogy and how all of these films support Unicron. Now, as a massive Transformers fan, I've been a Transformers fan since I was about 5 years old. I think it was the first franchise that I knew and loved. Had all the figures, Optimus Prime. I remember when I was like 12 years old, I got a Megatron after I'd had some surgery. And yeah, in love with the Transformers films have gone by. Even like the most recent ones, they're not the best, but it's always great to see Optimus Prime on screen. I mean, he's the GOAT. What I loved about this new trailer, though, is it brought me back to what I knew and loved from growing up with Transformers. It had that realistic look, the feel, the vibe of Transformers from, you know, previous. And this new trailer looked absolutely incredible. The just getting a message just quickly. Yeah, and the vibe that I got from the trailer was we're back to the roots. We're back to what made Transformers amazing, which is robot versus robot action. So that's what the trailer suggests. What I'm also really, really happy about is, and hopefully when we go through this article, is this new trilogy, which comes off the back of the Bumblebee film a couple of years back, hopefully builds towards an epic Unicron final battle. Now, for those that don't know, Unicron is like the big bad in the Transformers universe. He's like the dark side. He's like the Thanos level villain of the Transformers universe. And I'm so happy that there are theories that the new trilogy supports the introduction of Unicron, because that's all we've wanted for years and years and years. A big universe, introducing Cybertron as well, because that would be epic to see as well. Now, the Beast Transformers look brilliant from the trailer, and I'm really happy they're going down that route. Hopefully, though, we can see the introduction of the Dinobots again as well, because I thought they were great from the previous film. But let's see what the article suggests. So the confirmation that Paramount has plans for a new Transformers trilogy could support theories that Unicron is Rise of the Beasts villain. Now, without going into the just to, you know, kind of bring you up to speed, the Unicron is not the villain or the sub-villain for this new film. I think his name's Scourge, which is one of the Terracons. But what I hope to happen is they have the individual 3 films, but then they build, like they did with Thanos and Darkseid, or what they were going to do with Darkseid, build this overarching narrative and introduce Unicron into the story, because that would just be banging. And I'm going to keep that epic picture up there, actually, that's quality. Paramount's plan for the new Transformers trilogy supports the long-standing theories that Unicron is the villain of Transformers Rise of the Beasts and beyond. The next installment in the Transformers franchise is going to expand the movie mythology in some important ways. It is confirmed that Transformers 7 will introduce the Maximals, Terracrons, and Predacons in a way to push the franchise forward while still using known characters like Optimus Prime and Bumblebee. That is fantastic. There are even theories that Unicron will connect to the film and will be the main villain of Transformers Rise of the Beasts. I mean, that would be epic if he was. Making Unicron Transformers 7's villain would be a bit surprising, but there might be a plan in place to introduce him as the franchise's next big bad. I mean, if he is, that'd just be... Oh, I just can't wait. Paramount has confirmed Transformers Rise of the Beasts is the beginning of a new trilogy. The announcement that Transformers 8 and 9 are coming indicates that the studio has a plan in place for what the overall story will be, including what villain the Autobots and Maximals will fight moving forward. This is why there is an even stronger belief that Unicron is about to be introduced in the upcoming Transformers movie and become the main villain of the next trilogy. Why Unicron is the perfect villain for Transformers' new trilogy? Well, he is that Thanos level threat. He is that like global, massive, larger than life threat that could take out everyone. And you know, Unicron has always been the overall baddie in the Transformers universe. Yeah, it's been good versus bad. Autobots versus Decepticons, or Maximals versus Predacons and Terracons, but the overarching villain has always been Unicron. So to have these 3 films build up to that Unicron level event would just be absolutely epic. Whether they can do it in 3 films justifiably, we'll see. I mean, it's exciting though that they're doing it between now. It feels like a reboot. I don't know if it is a reboot, but it feels that way. Transformers Rise of the Beast is clearly taking the franchise in a new direction. I think it is as well. I think this is more of a reboot, which is why Unicron is the perfect villain for the new trilogy. The movies have so far heavily relied on Megatron as the main villain and overused the Decepticons as a result. That's a fair point. That is a fair point. Megatron has always been, you know, Prime's arch nemesis, but for a kind of galactic level event, they need something bigger than Megatron, and Unicron is that, you know, grand villain. Unicron would be a way for the Transformers franchise to chart a new future and keep the story fresh for general audiences. Absolutely agree, because we haven't seen Unicron yet in the previous like 6 installments. Not even in Bumblebee it was teased or anything. Meanwhile, long-time fans of the property, like myself, will finally be able to see the planet-sized glory in live action and the massive destruction that comes with Transformers villain Unicron. Paramount selecting him as the new trilogy's main villain will also be inherently increasing the scale. Well, yes, because this takes it from an you know, a global threat of Megatron, etc., to a universal threat, or even a multi-world threat, being both on Earth and on the Autobots and Decepticons' home planet of Cybertron. So there are also plenty of connections for the franchise to build on what makes Unicron a natural choice to be to be the trilogy's main foe. The original canon made Unicron responsible for creating Scourge, so that's who I was talking about earlier, who is the leader of the Terracons in Transformers Rise of the Beasts. The movie franchise could very well maintain this connection and use Scourge to set up Unicron's introduction. That seems very logical. The new Transformers trilogy could even adapt parts of the Transformers comics canon that saw Beast Wars, badass. Beast Wars was epic. Beast War characters Rhinox, Air Razor, Tyrannosaur and Cheetor become heralds of Unicron. So, is Unicron in Transformers Rise of the Beasts? I mean, I doubt he will be. He might be teased at the end, but I doubt he will be. The plans for Unicron will be the villain of a new trilogy. Could begin with an appearance of one of Transformers Rise of the Beast characters. It's currently not confirmed that the planet-consuming villain is in the film, but set photos teased his potential presence. Photos of Scourge included the Terracons having Unicron symbol. This means that Rise of the Beast will be at the least tease Unicron's existence and connection to the main plot. That's brilliant news. If the villain is not firmly present, the most likely outcome is that Unicron is saved for a post-credit scene or will make his first appearance in the middle of the Transformers trilogy. He's definitely going to be in the post-credit scene. Absolutely 100%. I have no doubt. But the fact that they're introducing Scourge as the main villain, whether Scourge survives or doesn't, just means that they can start that Unicron story arc, because that would just be epic. And if they can bring in the Dinobots somehow, having the Maximals, the Autobots and the Dinobots versus the Decepticons, the Predacons and the Terracons, and Unicron would just be like Endgame level event. Just be epic. So really looking forward to that. Rise of the Beast trailer looks epic. Transformers trilogy sounds epic. They're building to something great. Finally, hopefully we're going to get some really good Transformers films. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on was Jason David Frank's recent death. Rest in peace, brother, because you were my hero growing up. Jason David Frank recently passed away. He was literally the face of Power Rangers. He was not only the Green Ranger, but he was the White Ranger. He was the Red Zeo Ranger. I think he was I can't remember what the Black Ranger was called, but he was also the Red Ranger in Power Rangers Turbo. And yeah, he was the GOAT. He is the GOAT. He always will be the Power Rangers GOAT. And for me, I just wanted to, do a quick homage, a quick testimony to what was an incredible character. What I also wanted to touch on, though, is before his, untimely death, he has created a film called Legend of the White Dragon, and I'll link the recent trailer in the description below when the live stream's over. So if you want to check that out, he's got all sorts of previous characters from some of the Power Rangers series, some of the Power Rangers films. I know Adam, the Black Ranger, is in there as well. And some of the, I think the Red Ranger from Time Force as well is in there. So he's kind of brought back some old faces, and the story looks pretty decent. He's the main character. I think he's done a GoFundMe or something like that to get some of the funding for the film. He's brought on everyone himself. It's his project, and I'm just so glad that they managed to get this project over the line and this film over the line in time, because it's almost like his final goodbye. And yeah, this guy was my hero growing up. The Green Ranger arguably turned the Power Rangers from a really good show into what is arguably one of the most memorable and epic childhood programs, TV shows that I'd ever watched. And the Green Ranger was incredible. So rest in peace, Jason David Frank. Rest in peace, Green Ranger. Thanks for the memories, and yeah, thanks for the epic memories, the good times, the great TV. Rest in peace, man. I think we'll end this week's stream on that note. Hope you've enjoyed the content. It's great to be back. It's great to do something before New Year's. Happy New Year to you all. Thanks for a great year on jikGeek. Thanks for your support. Thanks for the growth. Looking forward to loads of content in 2023 and loads more jikGeek in the weeks, loads more videos, loads more live streams, loads more gaming. Looking forward to seeing you all there. Thanks a lot. Take care. See you on the next one. Bye for now.